Hey guys, tonight we begin beneath the feet of goats. No, really, you're not elegant yet, not gilded, not even fully hardened. You are mud. Damp, sticky, enthusiastic mud, clinging to the sandals of a teenage apprentice who has been sent, against his will, to the village kiln. He is not happy about it. His name is Bak, and he has all the charm of an unbaked brick and half the patience, but he's been told by his master that he'll never graduate from stick sketching to real engraving unless he first learns how things are made. So here you are, a spoon, not yet born, but imagined, carved into a two-part clay mold with a handle shaped like a reed stalk and a bowl shaped somewhere between a thumbprint and a smile. Bak grumbles the whole time, muttering about his sore back and the superiority of imported copper tools. You, meanwhile, are resting in a cradle of kiln-fired clay, and just above you, the sun is preparing to drop behind the fig trees. Goats bleat nearby. Someone is burning something, possibly food, possibly incense, possibly both. The village is a collection of thatched roofs and woven reed fences, cradled by dusty hills and the broad, muddy curve of a river so slow it's still considering whether to flow at all. The kiln beside you huffs gently, like a sleeping dog. Inside, bronze is melting. It's not pure. No Bronze Age metal ever is. This is a hardy blend of copper, a bit of tin, and a few secrets from the local blacksmith's wife, who swears a pinch of fishbone ash makes everything more flexible. Bak is not convinced. The molten metal is poured. It sears down into your mold, red hot and singing, then settles. There's a hiss, a smell like burning coins, and you are born, almost. You cool, overnight, wrapped in clay. The next morning, a woman named Nezzy cracks open your mold, like an egg. Her hands are strong, dust-stained, and quick. She does this 50 times a week and has no patience for imperfections. She lifts you into the sun, squints, and grunts. Decent, she hands you to Bak, who promptly drops you into a bucket of water without ceremony. Steam billows up. You sizzle, but you survive. Now comes the filing, the scraping, the shaping. Bak grinds away your rough edges on a whetstone, humming a festival song about spoiled dates and untrustworthy cousins. He tests your bowl against a handful of lentils. Satisfied, he etches a simple mark into your handle, a curled reed. It's not beautiful, but it's yours, and it tells everyone that you were made by Reed Village, on the western edge of the lower valley. You are placed on a woven mat alongside 20 other spoons, some wider, some with carved handles, some polished to near mirror finish. You are not the shiniest, but you are sturdy, balanced, comfortable, a practical spoon. By evening, you've been bundled with 3 bowls and 2 small plates and tied with a leather strap. A traveling merchant buys the lot, and just like that, you're off, riding in a basket next to a squawking chicken, under a blanket that smells like vinegar and pine resin. The ox cart jostles. You rattle softly. You pass river bends and rows of date palms, patches of barley and onion gardens, watchtowers built too close to one another, and fields where children wave palm fronds at nothing in particular. The basket lid opens, a hand reaches in. You are chosen, not by a king, not by a priest, not yet, by a man named Setu. He is a scribe. He has porridge stuck to his elbow and sandal straps chewed by his dog, and he's about to make you part of his morning routine for the next 3 years. Setu uses you not to scoop greatness, but to stir it, specifically honey into his breakfast bowl, every single morning, with 2 grunts, a sip of barley beer, and a little song he sings to the sun that involves far too many vowels. He likes you, calls you Little Moon because of your curve. You like him. He rinses you after every use, and once chased off a rooster with you during a particularly dramatic granary incident. But of course, things change. One morning, Setu forgets to rinse you. He's late for temple duty. His scroll pouch has a hole in it, and his apprentice is missing again. You're left in the sun, sticky with honey, and someone, likely a cousin of a neighbor, of a vendor, picks you up and carries you to the palace gates. You never see Setu again, but your real adventures, they're just beginning. The palace smells different. Not bad, just organized, like someone told the air to behave itself. Gone are the goat-scented breezes of the village and the vinegar-soaked linen of Setu's modest courtyard. Here, the breeze carries lotus and bread, sandalwood and something citrusy you can't quite name. You, dear Spoon, have made it. Well, sort of. You're not immediately placed on a velvet cushion or paraded before nobles. No one paints your handle or strings beads through your little loop. Instead, you're dropped unceremoniously into a chest of other utensils, some carved from ivory, some inlaid with lapis, some so delicate you're surprised they don't break when someone sighs near them. Still, you're sturdy, and no one throws you out. Your basket smells of cedar and cinnamon. The chest is opened and shut so many times it becomes a rhythm. Open, sunlight, shadow, close. You don't know how many days pass. And then, light again. A hand reaches in. It's a small hand, unsure. It lifts you gently. The girl holding you wears a tunic embroidered with stars. She squints, turning you over. Read, Mark, she murmurs. She's a junior priestess, barely 13, but trusted with helping prepare sacred meals, offerings to the gods, and occasionally to a rather picky high priest who insists his lentils be stirred clockwise exactly 7 times. You become her favorite. She uses you to scoop barley paste, to stir lentil mash, to ladle out pomegranate syrup, so thick it clings like memory. She cleans you thoroughly, sings to you softly, hides you under her sash when the older temple attendants come sniffing around, looking for missing items. You're mine now, she tells you, and you are, until the pickle incident. It begins with olives, big, glossy, brined in a vinegar so strong it could etch names into sandstone. The priestess is helping with a festival lunch. The high priest is already twitchy. The last ceremony ran long. The dancers missed their cues, and someone dropped a ceremonial duck mask into a brazier. You're being used, innocently, to scoop olives from a ceramic jar. But the table is crowded. Dish slips, the jar tips, and a flood of pickling liquid arcs through the air like a comet made of sour intentions. It lands directly in the high priest's sandal. Silence follows. The priest slowly lifts his foot, looks down, looks up, looks at you. In her panic, the priestess holds you up like a shield. It was the spoon. Technically true. You are, briefly, blamed for the entire incident. You are taken from the chest and moved. Some say demoted, others say relocated to the palace kitchens. But it's not punishment. Not really. The head cook is a genius in her own right. She picks you up with thick fingers dusted in coriander and says, "Finally, one that fits my grip." You begin your second life. You stir pots big enough to bathe in. You skim foam from stews that smell like dreams after a heavy nap. You are dipped into honey, vinegar, milk, beer, onion broth, fish paste, and something experimental involving fermented radish that everyone pretends to enjoy out of respect. You're not just a spoon. You're the spoon. You're the one she reaches for without looking. You're the one she keeps beneath a linen wrap, away from the other utensils. And one day, she takes you to the barge. Oh, the royal barge. It's not a boat. It's a floating pavilion. Carved wood, painted sails, musicians playing wind instruments that trill like sleepy birds. You rest inside a food basket packed with dates, almonds, dried figs, and a bowl of apricot pudding. You're wrapped in cloth that smells like cardamom. The sun glints off your handle. For a moment, you think, this is it. This is the pinnacle. The barge docks. The princess descends, flanked by servants carrying bowls and cushions, and an entire jar of pickled fish that, thankfully, you are not required to stir. And then she sees you, not the pudding, you. She picks you up, holds you to the light. "Read, Mark?" she says, surprised. "Old village spoon." She keeps you, again, just like that, tucks you into her sash like a charm. Later, she'll show you to a court scribe and demand your story. He'll invent half of it, of course. But you already know the truth. You were made in the mud. You were almost forgotten. You've fed priests and scribes and cooks, and once, very briefly, a temple cat who licked you clean when no one was looking. And now, you've seen the royal barge. You've touched apricot pudding, and you're still here, still sturdy, still stirring. You spend your next years in a palace drawer, not the glamorous kind lined with velvet and secrets. No, yours is a long, low wooden drawer beneath a stack of ceremonial tableware, gold-rimmed, bird-shaped, barely functional. They rest above you like theatrical cousins, beautiful but loud, and always getting chosen first for festivals and feasts, but not for every day. For every day, they reach for you. The drawer is your new temple. It smells like toasted grain, dust, and occasionally someone spilled saffron. You share your space with a chipped ladle and an ivory skewer that once held 6 olives at once. A record no one talks about, but everyone remembers. There's a rhythm to it. Sunlight creeps across the tiles each morning. The drawer slides open. A hand reaches in. Sometimes the princess's, sometimes her cook's, sometimes a servant who mutters, "Where's that one I like?" before pulling you out with a satisfied grunt. You stir a little porridge, help portion out dates. Once, you're used to lift a beetle from a pot of honey before a priest could see it. He's terrified of beetles. It's a long-standing issue. One day, a visitor from a neighboring court arrives. She's tall, wears too much perfume, and carries a peacock feather fan even though it's windy. She requests a royal tasting, demanding that every dish be served with authenticity. The kitchen staff grumble. You are cleaned, polished, laid gently beside a bowl of pomegranate soup. And then, tragedy. The princess's younger brother, determined to impress the guest, decides to help. He dips you into the soup, whirls around dramatically, trips on his own sash, and flings you across the pavilion. You fly, gracefully, some say. Undignified, others insist. You land in a large water basin, sink with a soft plop, and vanish from the afternoon entirely. They look for you. They really do. But the basin is deep, the water murky, and lunch must go on. Eventually, someone shrugs, and you are forgotten. Again. For a while, you rest, wrapped in silence, and silt. A few fish pass overhead, unimpressed. It is not a terrible rest. When you are finally fished out, months later, by a boy chasing an escaped duck, you are a little tarnished, a little crusted with minerals, and oddly peaceful. The duck is retrieved. You are not. The boy keeps you because he likes how you feel in his hand, because you're heavier than a reed spoon, but lighter than a copper one, because he too once fell in a basin and understands. He brings you home. His mother is a spice seller. You spend the next phase of your life scooping dried coriander, measuring cumin seeds, and sometimes getting buried under piles of saffron when the wind gets feisty. You're labeled with a scrap of cloth that reads, Official Spice Scoop. Don't steal again, Setet. You have no idea who Setet is, but it's a solid warning. People come and go. They comment on your shape, your weight. One woman insists you're a ritual tool, made for measuring soul fragments. Another says you're perfect for sugar. Children sneak you to dig in the dirt behind the stall. You help bury 3 figs and 1 tiny pebble treasure. Eventually, you are loaned, temporarily, to a traveling merchant. He doesn't ask permission. He just borrows you, tosses you into a satchel with cloth scraps and 2 jars of salted fish paste, and heads east. You pass mountains, swamps, dust storms, city with 5 towers, and a smell like burnt onions, and something no one wants to discuss. You attend a dozen meals, none of which involve tables. You are used to scoop dried rose petals into a bath, then yogurt into a bowl, then vinegar into someone's eye by accident. The merchant swears this was not your fault. You believe him. He names you Lefty because he always forgets which pouch you're in. When his pack breaks during a river crossing, he doesn't notice you fall. But a girl washing linen by the water's edge does. She plucks you from the silt, turns you over in her hands, whispers, "Lucky spoon." You don't disagree. She carries you in her sash, back to another village, another chance, another chapter. You, who once served pomegranate soup on a royal barge, are now stirring lentils over a fire so smoky it smells like half of memory and a pinch of sneeze. And yet, there's something warm in the rhythm, in the way she wipes you clean, in the way her grandmother nods and says, "That's a good spoon. You were made in fire, thrown across a festival, lost in soup, buried beside spices, and you're still here, still stirring, still part of someone's meal. Time passes, the way soup simmers, slowly, with no intention of hurrying. You, dear spoon, have returned to your element, stirring, scooping, tasting. You're in a small reed roof house now, your handle poking from a clay pot of utensils that includes a twisted fork, a stick someone calls spice staff, and a carved ladle that thinks quite highly of itself. Thank you very much. The girl who found you at the river, her name is Henny, uses you daily. She stirs lentils and barley porridge, scrapes honey into clay dishes, and once tried using you to crush garlic. It was not elegant. You're still a little sore, but you're happy, not because life is grand, but because life is consistent. And that's rare for a spoon like you. One morning, Henny's uncle arrives with news. A cousin in the city is getting married. There's a feast. A gift is required. Something useful but clever, he says. You are, unfortunately, both. So Henny wraps you in linen, tucks you into a satchel with a pouch of cumin seeds, and off you go. Again, to the city. The city is loud, like really loud. There are carts rumbling over cobbled streets, sellers shouting, children chasing goats, and a man yelling about discount sandals in a voice that might cause birds to abandon their nests out of sheer embarrassment. You, meanwhile, are passed from hand to hand, from satchel to basket, and eventually to a noblewoman. She's not here for the wedding. She's here for silk. But her servant hands her the pouch by mistake, and she pulls you out, looks at your handle, and says, "Oh, how quaint." And just like that, you're back in palace hands. Again, she adds you to a tray of objects being offered to the court's inventory keeper, a man named Jati, who smells like old parchment and frustration. Jati doesn't know what to do with you. You're not labeled. You're not shiny. You don't match anything. So he shrugs and drops you into a small, miscellaneous box. You rattle, you sulk, you nap. For several months, you're surrounded by broken seals, chipped tokens, one earring shaped like a frog, and something no one can identify, but everyone agrees is probably cursed. One day, a junior official is told to do something with all this, and that's how you become a stamp. Technically, you are pressed into duty, literally, to scoop and smooth small amount of sealing paste onto scrolls and tablet cases. Very efficient, someone says. Nicely weighted, someone else adds. They carve a symbol into your bowl, just a little one, barely visible. But there it is, your first real rebranding. You are now, officially, Seal Spoon. You miss lentils. Still, it's not a bad job. You handle temple scrolls, festival permits, messages wrapped in reed twine. You witness flirtations, lies, taxes, and one absolutely dreadful poem written entirely in boat metaphors. And then, of course, someone forgets you on a cart. The cart belongs to a market vendor named Kebby. She sells dried lemons and various things in tiny baskets labeled, "Trust me." She doesn't notice you for a week. Then one morning, she pulls you out while scooping sesame seeds and mutters, "Ooh, fancy." And now you're a market spoon, which, honestly, may be your favorite job yet. You live in Kebby's basket of measuring tools, among shells, wooden scoops, and a coin she swears is lucky, even though it's probably just bent. You scoop spices, You listen to gossip. You get oiled with date pit resin twice a month to keep you fresh. Children come by to peek at you. One insists you used to belong to a queen. KB doesn't correct him. You like her. She doesn't fuss. She wipes you clean, wraps you in cloth at night, and once polished your handle while humming a love song that had no business being that catchy. You travel with her from city to city. Each market has its own smell. Cloves in one, dried fish in another, something unidentifiably sweet and sharp in a place known for dyeing cloth in colors loud enough to make dogs bark. You are used to settle disputes. That's 2 spoonfuls, not 3. You are offered as a prize in a spice-guessing game. You are loaned to a boy making soup and returned sticky but apologetic. It's a good life. And then, Kebby retires, quietly, without fuss. She gives you to her niece, who places you in a satchel, which goes to a cousin, which gets left on a cart, which gets picked up by a boy heading toward the harbor. And somehow, there you are again, back at the river, back under the sun, watching your reflection ripple gently in the water, and thinking, well, here we go again. You're not sure how long you drift. The satchel is wedged between sacks of barley and something that smells like warm cheese and damp regret. The boy steering the cart hums off-key and mutters to his ox about girls, taxes, and how the city never gave him the right change for those figs last week. Your satchel jostles. Something clinks. Then something, possibly a cucumber, explodes. Eventually, you arrive not at another city, but a riverside temple compound. Low walls, whitewashed courtyards, shaded colonnades, and a general feeling that everything here is either sacred or in the process of being swept. The boy drops the satchel off near the temple kitchen. A priestess finds you 2 days later. She's tall, soft-spoken, and has a way of carrying bowls like they're messages from the gods. She's inspecting items for reuse, sorting what's useful from what's just another, offering someone forgot to offer properly. She picks you up, turns you over, sees your now faint reed mark and your newer stamp dent, and smiles. I remember these, and just like that, you're recruited again. Not as a ladle, not as a market tool, but as a temple spoon, a sacred utensil in the service of rituals, both mysterious and mildly sticky. Your job, to scoop offerings, barley mash for the shrine of the river goddess, honey for the statue of the moon-faced lion, once fermented fish paste for a minor god of headaches. The smell haunts you still. The priestess uses you carefully. You are washed in sacred water, dried in lotus leaves, and whispered to, not often, but enough that you begin to feel like you're holding a secret. You learn the rhythms of the temple, morning chants, midday hush, evening songs drifting over the courtyard like lazy moths. The statue of the goddess wears a linen robe changed every full moon. You witness every swap from your perch on a cedar shelf. A cat lives nearby. She eyes you suspiciously. One day, she paws at you, knocks you off the shelf, and sits on you for an hour. Your only real complaint about the temple. During a special rite, you're used to anoint a stone with a mixture of water, date syrup, and finely ground myrrh. It smells like longing and bees. You are held up, offered toward the sunrise and lowered slowly until your contents drip onto the stone. No one claps, but a breeze lifts the linen curtain just so. The priestess smiles. You still have weight, she says. Later that week, a visiting scholar inspects the temple's collection of tools. He picks you up, turns you over, pauses. This one's old, he says. Bronze, reed marked, stamped. He squints at your bowl. There's a story here. The priestess shrugs. A good spoon. He smiles. That's usually all the story we need. But he still tucks a note beside you. Bronze utensil, early style, used in ritual. Possible mixed use over time. Village origin? He doesn't know you've seen 6 cities, 3 courts, 2 river crossings, and 1 apricot pudding incident no one talks about anymore. But that's fine. You're not here to explain yourself. You're here to hold. You're laid beside a new object now, an obsidian scraper with a single pearl inlaid at the tip. She doesn't talk much, but she's elegant. You respect each other. Sometimes, during the long, quiet hours, you rest against each other just slightly, just enough to not feel alone. One evening, a boy sweeping the storage room knocks over your shelf. You fall, land softly in a basket of spare cloth. The boy gasps, then shrugs, and carries the whole basket back to the laundry courtyard. And just like that, you're in laundry now. Because of course you are. The laundry area is bright, chaotic, fragrant. Soapwort everywhere. You are discovered again by a girl trying to find a lost hairpin. She lifts you, examines your edge, and immediately decides you're perfect for scooping powdered starch. She is correct. You're excellent at starch, and soon you're part of the laundry ritual. Dip, dot, scoop, sprinkle, whisk. It's not sacred. It's not glamorous. But it is regular. Daily, soothing, and you like the smell of warm linen drying in the sun. One morning, a robe folds just right, and the girl whispers, "That's thanks to you." You rattle gently in her palm. The starch clings to your bowl, like memory, refusing to dissolve. And you're proud. A spoon that once graced a royal barge, now starched a priest's robe. To perfect stillness, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Again, the scent of starch lingers, even now, as you sit drying on a folded reed mat. The air hums with steam and crushed soap root, and the faint whisper of incense drifting from somewhere much holier. You've spent your morning scooping powdered starch into a wide basin. Swish, whisk, pour, pause, while 2 women worked in tandem, folding garments into shapes so precise they might hold memories themselves. But today, something shifts. Not the weather. It's dry, as always. Not the routine. That's unchanged. It's the visitor. He arrives just after midday, a quiet figure in dark linen, with a scroll pouch at his hip and a sand-scuffed expression that says, "I've walked too far without a plan." The starch girl looks up, squints, and shrugs. He doesn't say much, just asks, "Do you still keep that basket of old tools?" She nods, points to the shelf, and you are lifted again. Back into the light, the man turns you over in his hands, studies the faint reed etching, then the dent near your rim, evidence of your brief time as a seal spoon. He sniffs the starch still clinging faintly to your curve. Then, surprisingly, he smiles. This, he murmurs, once served pomegranate soup. You don't know how he knows that, but he's right. He wraps you in a linen square, soft, bleached, stitched with care, and tucks you into his pouch. You rattle gently against a vial of ink, and just like that, you're off again, through narrow alleys, under palm trees that wave like bored dancers, into the back entrance of a small, square building with a tiled roof and shelves stacked with scrolls, carvings, and things no one's quite finished labeling. Museum. Well, sort of. It's not called that yet. Not in this time. But it's a room where memory lives. The man places you on a mat beside an obsidian dagger and a pot of coal so old it smells like dried stories. He doesn't label you. Not yet. He just writes a note. Bronze implement. Uncertain use. Possible ritual or culinary object. Handle mark. Read. You sit there for weeks. Dust settles. Sunlight creeps across your bowl at different angles. Children sneak into the room sometimes and poke at objects with wide eyes. One little girl picks you up and whispers, "This one's magic." You rattle a little. Why not? Eventually, you are moved to a wooden drawer lined with linen, and there you rest. For years, decades, maybe longer. You lose count. Everything slows, even your memory. You remember lentils, the river, apricot, starch. You forget your name, if you ever had one, until one night, moonlight, a new figure enters. Quiet footsteps, a young woman with hands like a scribe and eyes like someone who's read too many scrolls with too little candlelight. She opens your drawer, doesn't gasp, doesn't shout. She just sees you, lifts you, traces the reed mark with her thumb. Bronze, she whispers, old, but not ceremonial. She turns to the moonlight, tilts your bowl until it catches the soft silver glow. Then she sees it, not the reed mark, not the dent, but the carving on your underside, the one nobody ever looked for. Faint, small, easy to miss, just one word. Hers. She blinks and smiles. I knew it, she says. She doesn't explain what she means. She wraps you again, places you not back in the drawer, but on a tray beside the window. Somewhere visible, somewhere remembered. You sit, light returns. Dust shifts. A cat walks past, flicks its tail, and knocks over a scroll. The girl sighs, then laughs. I suppose you're still causing trouble, she says. And maybe you are. But maybe you're just ready to be still, to be held, to be remembered. In your new resting place, on a tray by the window, you begin to understand something odd. You're being admired, not used, not scooped, not dipped into soup or starch or syrup, but observed, studied, spoken to, softly, as if you might respond, if the timing were just right. The young curator, because that's what she is, though the word hasn't been invented yet, visits daily. Sometimes she just sits beside you, a reed stylus in one hand and a palm leaf biscuit in the other, scratching thoughts onto scrap parchment. Sometimes she speaks aloud, not expecting answers, but leaving space for you, all the same. Why were you carved? She asks one morning. brushing a speck of dried starch from your rim. Who was hers? You, of course, remain silent, not out of defiance, but because you've always spoken through the hands that held you. Still, your silence seems to satisfy her. She starts referring to you in the third person, to visitors. This one's a survivor, she says to a curious priest. Been found, lost, found again. Like most of us, you're cleaned, gently, with a cloth soaked in citrus water, and something she insists is respectfully non-damaging. Your bowl gleams again, but not brightly. You're never meant to be flashy, just honest. More visitors come. Most ignore you. They lean toward the obsidian dagger, the ceremonial necklace made from turtle shell and coral beads, the incredibly ugly fertility idol carved like a man mid-sneeze. But a few pause. Look, ask. Is this a spoon? Someone whispers. The curator shrugs. Depends who you ask. She lets a young boy hold you for a moment. He balances you on one palm, then tries to use you to flip a piece of flatbread before she snatches you back. No. Still, you feel alive. Again. Not in motion, but in attention. You catch glimmers of sunlight as it rises each morning. Smell ink and old scrolls and sandalwood oil from the archivist who never bathes quite as often as she should. You're wrapped occasionally for safekeeping, but always unwrapped again. Someone touches your handle every day. It's a quiet kind of life. The curator sometimes sleeps in the same room. You hear her sigh in her dreams. Hear the scratch of her stylus when she can't sleep. Hear her whisper names she doesn't say in daylight. One night, she lays a new scroll beside you. It's not about you. Not directly. It's about a woman, a cook, possibly a priestess, maybe both. The scroll reads like a song, half poem, half recipe, all memory. The measurements are oddly specific. A spoon of honey, stirred in a circle, while the fire listens. She looks at you, then writes in the margin, same spoon. You glow a little in the moonlight. Then, without ceremony, something shifts. A messenger arrives. He's dusty, out of breath, and overly proud of the feather in his hat. He carries a list. A new exhibit is being planned in the capital. Something to do with royal dining customs, sacred objects, and tools of daily holiness. You are somehow on the list. The curator argues. At first, they won't understand, she says. They'll display it like decoration, like trivia. The messenger shrugs, orders, so she wraps you again, more carefully than ever. 2 layers of linen, tied with soft twine. She writes a note, tucks it in with you, and sends you off. The journey is long, bumpy. You ride in a crate between a jar of garum and a set of wax tablets. That won't stop gossiping about their former owner's foot fungus. When the crate is opened, it's in a tall, echoing hall filled with oil lamps and glass cases. You are placed on a plinth, alone, lit from above. You're not flashy, but you're magnetic. People pause, read the note. Bronze spoon, origin uncertain, found across multiple contexts. Domestic, ritual, funerary. Handlebars read etching. Bowl inscribed faintly with the word hers. Some scoff, some linger, some smile. A child presses her nose to the glass and whispers, "It looks like it wants to tell me something." You do. But she already knows. She just doesn't know how she knows. You sleep now in lamplight and stillness, not forgotten, not lost, still stirring, always stirring. You've never stayed this still for so long. Your place on the plinth is permanent now, or so it seems. The air is dry, regulated, and smells faintly of olive oil and polished wood. The lamps above you flicker gently, never fully dark, never fully bright, just enough glow to catch the subtle curves of your bowl, the faint memory of fire once poured into clay. Visitors file past, some glance, some stop. Few understand. But one day, a man leans in, much too close, and whispers, "You were used to feed a god once, weren't you?" You don't answer, but something in the way your bowl curves toward the light makes him step back, as if he's just trespassed into someone else's memory. The museum changes with seasons. Paintings come and go. Banners are hung and removed, but you remain. Not the centerpiece, not even the crowd favorite, but reliable. A mystery, a question wrapped in bronze. Then comes the scholar. She doesn't look like much at first. Hair in a loose knot, robes wrinkled, sandals older than you are, which is saying something, but her eyes are bright, sharp, and oddly familiar. She stares at you a long time, comes back the next day, and the day after. On the third day, she brings a rubbing, lays it beside your case. Her brow furrows, then lifts, a soft laugh. "You're the one," she says. "She's found your twin. Well, not your twin. No one could copy your entire journey. But your cousin, perhaps. Another spoon. Similar bowl shape, different handle. Same faint carving underneath. Hers. The scholar petitions the curators. Once, you moved. Paired. She argues, "You're not a relic. You're a thread in a story." The board agrees. With hesitation, you are placed beside the other spoon. It's heavier, slightly warped. You recognize it not by shape, but by feeling. A spoon you once knocked into during a temple washing ceremony, the edge that scraped your rim when a cat knocked you off the shelf. You sit together again, silently, both of you old, both of you quiet, but no longer alone. Children begin to ask questions. Were they sisters? Was hers a person? Were they used at the same feast? The museum writes a new placard, paired bronze implements, likely used in ritual or domestic settings. Matching inscriptions suggest belonging or designation. Current theories debate ownership, gifting, or spiritual dedication. Historians still argue whether the word hers marks a name, a prayer, or simply possession. Some say it's a dedication to a goddess. Some say it was a child's spoon, cherished, labeled with affection, and carried through time by accident and care. But one girl, nose pressed to the glass, says, maybe they just loved her, and maybe they did. You remember warmth. You remember honey. You remember the hand that etched that word into you with a tool no sharper than a thorn. You don't remember her name, but you remember the shape of her fingers. One morning, you are lifted again, carefully, gloved hands, bright lights. You're being scanned now, preserved in mirrors and light beams in something called photogrammetry. The technician whispers as she adjusts you. I hope you're not camera shy. You're not. You've been seen more ways than this. You're digitized, archived, recreated in files that can travel faster than any ox cart. A 3D model of you is placed on a learning site. Students rotate you with flicks of fingers on glowing screens. One writes, I love her. I don't know who she is, but I love her. Another adds, it's weird that a spoon can feel like home. They don't know that you remember reeds and starch and the gentle curve of a moonrise over a dusty river. But that's okay. They feel it, even through glass and code. You remain in your case, but your shape is everywhere now. In classrooms, in imaginations, in the quiet corners of people's lives. You are no longer just a spoon. You are a vessel of memory, and still a little bit hungry. You'd think, after everything, you'd be done moving, but history has a habit of rolling you forward like a lazy marble, slow, inevitable, and always toward somewhere new. The museum where you rest undergoes renovations. The staff is polite, careful, but overworked. You are boxed, labeled, cradled in linen once more, and tucked into a storage drawer beside a small bronze mirror and a broken necklace shaped like a scorpion in a very bad mood. You're supposed to be there for a week, maybe 2. Instead, try 27 years. No light, no whispers, just the slow shuffling of air. You think, maybe, this is your final nap, and you're okay with that. You've done your part. But then, a rattle, a thump, voices. Someone, young, probably new, opens the drawer and gasps. They call over a colleague, then a supervisor. Then, as if the museum has been waiting for the right moment, a project begins. The Forgotten Drawer exhibit. Suddenly, it's your time again. The curator, new but sharp-eyed, holds you up with reverence and wonder. She notes the mark, the patina, the tiny notch where you were once dropped on temple tile, and the word, hers. She doesn't try to explain it away. She just nods and writes on her clipboard, include this one. Feels important. You're dusted, documented, and displayed again. This time, not in a formal exhibit hall, but in a smaller, more personal gallery. Wooden shelves, soft lights, handwritten labels. There's even a bench for sitting. People don't just glance at you here. They linger. They read your story, assembled from bits and guesses, and one very old curator's scribbled notes from decades before. They see the reed mark, the dent, the faint edge of something written in a time when memory was carved by hand. And once again, theories bloom like river reeds in flood season. A local historian insists you were used in the early courtship ceremonies. An elderly visitor swears her grandmother had a spoon just like you, used only for weddings and funerals. A child insists you are, in fact, magical. She draws a picture of you flying over rooftops, trailing lentils like stardust. She leaves the picture by your case. The curator finds it the next morning and tapes it to the wall beside your display. No one takes it down. Then, something new. You're chosen as the symbol of the exhibition. Posters go up. The spoon that survived. Ordinary objects, extraordinary lives. You're flattered, a little confused. but deeply honored. A local baker makes cookies shaped like you. They're slightly lopsided, but delicious. A folk musician writes a song about your travels, using a spoon to tap rhythm on a drum as he sings about soups, scrolls, riverboats, and memory. You've gone from buried bronze to cultural ambassador, but you don't let it go to your bowl. At night, when the museum empties out and the lights dim, you sit quietly in your case and listen, because now people are talking about objects the way they talk about stories, not as things to catalog, but as things to feel. A girl sits by your case, her eyes red from something unspoken, and says softly to no one in particular, "I think someone I loved held something just like this. You understand? You always have. That's what spoons do. We hold things, soups, stories, souls." One night, a researcher from far away asks to borrow you, temporarily, for a traveling exhibition on ancient objects of daily affection. The museum staff hesitates, but agrees. You're boxed again, wrapped in layers softer than moonlight, sent across land and sea. When you arrive, you're greeted like an honored guest, placed in a round glass case with a soft glow and a note. It reads, "This is a spoon, but also a life, a laugh, a love, a mystery, a memory." You settle in, listen to new languages, new footsteps, new wonder, and once, just once, someone walks by, turns back, and whispers, "Still stirring, aren't you?" Your new exhibition home smells like polished stone and distant rain. The floors are smooth, and the echoes here are gentle, like the museum itself is whispering back to every step taken inside it. You sit in your round case, quietly proud, letting the world rediscover you again and again. They come in groups, families, students, elderly couples walking slowly, reading every placard aloud like casting spells. The curators here seem softer, less obsessed with exact dates, more curious about what objects felt like. They speak to you not as a utensil, but as a survivor. One day, they stage a small play. Right there in the gallery, an actor portrays a temple cook from 3,000 years ago. He holds a replica of you in his hand, stirring an imaginary pot. He speaks lines written by a local poet. Some spoons serve gods, some serve hunger. This one remembers both. The audience chuckles, then falls quiet. It's a moment that lands like a warm stone in cool water, rippling without noise. You rest a little heavier in your case that evening. The next day, something stranger happens. A small group of visitors gathers around you, not looking at your placard, not posing for photos, but sketching with charcoal, pencils, pastels, drawing you. A curator explains softly to another guest, "This is part of our silent observation hour. No phones, no talking, just connecting. The rule is, pick one object, spend an hour with it, draw, write, or just sit. You become a favorite. They like your curve, your story, the tiny word beneath your base. Some sketch you realistically, others give you wings. One child draws you as a crown, another turns you into a boat sailing across lentil soup. And always, somewhere on the page, they include the word hers. Scholars still debate what it meant. Was it a name, a marking, a spell? Some argue hers wasn't about ownership at all, but about offering, about trust. A spoon given in service, not taken in possession. There's even a new theory, unpublished, still whispered among postgraduate students, that hers may refer to a goddess so minor she's vanished from every text, but left behind one bronze artifact still murmuring her name. They argue for hours over this in cafes, tapping laptops and scribbling notes, always circling back to you, the spoon, with the word. One student gets a tattoo of your bowl, with hers in flowing script beneath it. You don't flinch, but if you had lips, you'd smile. Back in the exhibit, you've become beloved, not famous, not viral, but important, reliable, steady, the kind of object people remember long after they've forgotten what city they saw it in. You're placed on the final page of the museum guidebook, not with a number, not with a catalog, code, just a line. If you need something to believe in, she's here. Late one evening, the gallery empties out, just staff and the soft humming of the lights above. A young guard lingers by your case. He's quiet, tired. You can tell. He speaks just above a whisper, unsure why. I don't really believe in anything, he says. But if I did, maybe it'd be in something like you. He doesn't expect an answer, but he stands there a long time. And you? You do what spoons do best. You hold the silence. Your glass case sits near the far wall now, slightly to the left of a carved bone flute and a perfectly intact clay bowl. The lighting here is warmer, golden, low, the kind of glow that makes everyone feel like they've stumbled into memory rather than a museum. You've become part of the quiet, part of the invitation to slow down. A sign nearby even says, "Please take your time. This gallery rewards patience." You couldn't agree more. Across the day, guests drift by. Some take a photo, flash off, respectfully. Some stand with arms crossed, eyes narrowed, as if trying to place you, like they've seen you before in a dream, or a kitchen, or a story someone once told while the fire was dying. You've stirred a lot of things: soup, debate, wonder, and now you stir something else entirely: recognition. Not that they know you exactly, but they know the feeling of you, that curve, that weight, that unspoken trust between object and hand. One afternoon, a group of school children arrives. They're loud, energetic, delightfully chaotic. Their guide, a woman with a voice like soft gravel and sandals, made for standing, leads them to your case. "This one's my favorite," she says, and the children look. And then she says something you haven't heard in a very long time. She might have belonged to someone who worked in a palace, or a temple, or a kitchen. We don't know, but she was used. A lot. And someone cared enough to write hers underneath, just so no one would forget. The kids lean closer. One whispers, "That's it." The guide nods. "That's everything." The children fall silent for a moment. Then someone draws a heart on their museum worksheet. And that's enough. That night, as the building stills and the lights dim to their nighttime hush, you notice the custodian pause by your case. He wipes a smudge off the glass with his sleeve, gently, and says, Still here, huh? You are, and you've seen more than most. You remember being used to stamp scrolls in a dusty temple. You remember being the chosen scoop for royal apricot pudding. You remember the river, the starch, the girl who tucked you into her sash like you were more treasure than tool. And you remember the long silence, because the silence teaches you to listen, and you've listened well. One morning, a traveling historian arrives. She wears layers of linen and carries a basket of small instruments, brushes, gloves, a magnifying disc. She's been studying Bronze Age domestic items for years and has finally come to see you in person. The museum gives her permission for a hands-on session, with ceremony, with care. She lifts you, wears gloves, of course, but still, her hands are gentle, curious, grateful. She whispers, "You're heavier than I thought," and smiles. She examines your reed mark, your dent, the shallow wear patterns inside your bowl, then turns you over, sees the carving. Her breath catches. She's seen it in photos, rubbings, notes, but in person, it's different. Hers. She nods to herself. Later, in her notes, she will write, "There's a feeling to this object, a quiet dignity, as if it remembers things no one wrote down." She's right. You do. A month later, she publishes an article, not in an academic journal, but in a magazine made for people who love stories more than citations. She calls you the spoon that lived. The story goes viral, sort of, not fast, but wide. Readers everywhere feel something when they see your picture. Some cry, some smile. One writes, "I didn't know I needed this story, but now I want to know what else is waiting in drawers." Suddenly, other museums begin opening their drawers too. Hidden objects become a theme, a movement, and while you didn't start it, you were there when it began, sitting quietly, curved and ready, still, holding what came before, waiting patiently for what comes next. It's quiet again, but a different kind of quiet, not the hush of being forgotten in a storage drawer, or the solemn stillness of ritual halls. This is a thoughtful quiet, filled with purpose, like the air knows it's near something important and doesn't want to disturb it. You've been moved, not far, just to a more central display in the museum's newly renamed exhibit, The Lives of Everyday Things. You sit in a simple case, beside a worn-out sandal and a wooden weaving tool that looks like it's been through 3 empires and 1 polite revolution. Your placard has been updated. It doesn't call you ritual, doesn't call you culinary. It calls you hers. Object, bronze spoon. Estimated date, 1500 BCE. Known uses, unknown. Belonged to, someone who mattered. That's it. That's the whole thing. And somehow, that's enough. People stop. They really stop. Not to analyze, not to squint at your patina or debate your metallurgy. They stop because you feel like something they lost and just remembered to miss. They stop because you remind them of someone's kitchen or someone's silence, or the way an ordinary thing becomes sacred when it's carried long enough through time. They don't take pictures as often anymore. Instead, they just look. A woman sits on the gallery bench every Thursday, always for 20 minutes. Sometimes she writes in a notebook. Sometimes she just watches your bowl reflect the changing light. A boy asks if he can bring his grandmother to see you. She had a spoon that looked just like this, he says, but it got lost when we moved. The docent says yes, of course. Week later, she's there. She doesn't say much, just holds her grandson's hand and stares, then nods, whispers something in a language no one around her speaks. You hear it. You don't need a translation. Elsewhere in the world, a small museum in a windy coastal town decides to make its own everyday lives exhibit. They ask to borrow you. The request is polite, formal, full of reverent phrases like shared stewardship and cultural humility. Your current museum hesitates, but you're already ready. You've traveled before, crossed rivers, fallen from carts, survived starch, cats, pudding, and poetry. You are packed again, wrapped in silk this time, nestled inside a travel case, cushioned with wool and kindness. You arrive at a museum built partly into a hillside. There's moss on the stones, salt in the air. A woman with sea wind hair unwraps you and whispers, "Welcome home, even if it's not." They place you near the window, not because you need light, but because people do. Children press their fingers to the glass, not to smudge it, but to trace your shape. One asks, "Why is it shaped like a leaf?" Her teacher says, "Because someone thought that was beautiful." At night, the gallery hushes again. Not entirely. You hear wind, gulls, and once, late, a janitor singing to herself as she sweeps. Off key but from the heart. You like it here. You always liked places that weren't too proud. You remember kitchens more than courts, hands more than halls, whispers more than fanfare. That's what you are. A whisper that never quite faded, a spoon that didn't disappear, a life that was ordinary and loved. And that was enough. That is enough. You stir memory, still, and somewhere across the sea, in another gallery, your sister spoon sits alone next to a linen-wrapped comb and a ceramic cup with a chipped rim. She waits too. She's good at it. One day, maybe, you'll share a case again. But for now, you rest and wait for the next hand to wonder. The sea wind never stops. It flutters the museum's banners, seeps through cracks in the stonework, and sometimes causes the staff to sigh, wrap their shawls tighter, and mutter about this cursed draft. But to you, it's just another kind of breath, the kind you remember from open-air kitchens and riverbank picnics, from market stalls and temple courtyards. It carries memory, like you carry soup. One day, a researcher from the coastal town's small university visits. He's studying the emotional impact of object storytelling. His paper is full of theories, footnotes, and an enthusiasm that could power 3 oxen and a reluctant donkey. He stares at you a long time. Then he does something no one else has done in the decades. He opens the case, with permission, of course. Wearing gloves, he holds you, not like you're fragile, but like you're true. He balances you on his palm, feels your weight, and says, "Huh, you're not that special," then adds, smiling, "But that's what makes you magic." He takes a photo, not for publication, but for himself, prints it, tapes it above his desk. In the photo, your handle shines just a little, as if winking. Later, in his lecture, he doesn't use a slide with your measurements or metal content. He just shows the photo and says, "This is a spoon," then waits. After the pause, he adds, "It was buried, forgotten, reused, lost again, passed from cook to priestess to merchant to museum. It survived 3,000 years, not because it was powerful, not because it was gold, but because someone, probably a girl no one wrote about, cared enough to mark it hers." He ends the lecture there. No conclusion, no questions, just silence, and it stays with them. You feel it, a slow ripple, not applause, but something better. Stillness of understanding. That same stillness wraps around the museum at night, except for the mouse. There's a mouse now. She lives beneath the bench, near your case, emerges cautiously, sniffs the corners, occasionally sits on her haunches, and watches you with bright, twitchy curiosity. You don't mind. You've been part of stranger rituals. A new exhibit arrives from inland. It features ceremonial drinking horns, war helmets, and something described, perhaps too generously, as an early surgical kit. Your curators panic, not because the artifacts are dangerous, but because someone forgot to submit your return paperwork. You were never meant to stay this long. But now the town has claimed you. The curator posts a note on the museum's front door. She's one of us now, and they mean it. You are featured in the museum's brochure, their letterhead, even their holiday cards. One particularly creative version shows you wearing a tiny snowflake crown, and the words "still stirring" after all these years. It's a kind of immortality you never asked for, but it fits, like a bowl filled just to the edge. One rainy afternoon, a visitor asks if she can sketch you. She's quiet, young, has the posture of someone who rarely gets believed, but always keeps noticing. She spends an hour, maybe two. When she's done, she doesn't show anyone, but she leaves a note in the guest book. I think she remembers me. I don't know how, but I think she does. You do. Not her name, not her kitchen, but the feeling, the soft way she looked at you, the reverence, usually reserved for stars and childhood recipes. You remember, you hold it like always, still stirring, still here, still hers. The seasons shift. You don't mark them by calendar or solstice. You feel them in the light, the way it slants through the museum's windows, the way shadows stretch or shorten, the way children return in noisy bursts during school breaks, then vanish again into quiet routine. Time changes here, but softly. You've become part of that softness. Visitors no longer rush past. They lean in, they bring friends. They tell each other, "That's the one I was talking about, the spoon." You've become a kind of pilgrimage, not flashy, not famous, but steady. Something to come back to when the world gets a bit too fast. A man in his 70s visits once a month. He never stays long, just stands in front of your case, nods once, and leaves. One day, he lingers and speaks. "My wife would have loved you," he says. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't have to. A teenage girl brings in her entire sketchbook, filled with drawings of you in different poses, with little stories in the margins. One shows you stirring starlight into a night sky. Another has you rowing a boat across a lake made of tea. The last page is simple, just your shape, and the words still whole. You are. You've been dropped, buried, scorched, mislabeled, and misunderstood, but you've never broken. That matters. One foggy morning, the museum opens late. A pipe burst. The staff scrambles to protect the exhibits. There's some panic. Towels, buckets, shouts. You're moved. Carefully, quickly, not back to storage, not this time, to the director's office, just until the repairs are finished. You sit on his desk beside a bowl of sugared dates and a half-written speech about community funding. Looks at you often, sometimes speaks aloud when no one's around. She's older than everything we know, he murmurs one evening, and somehow more honest. A week later, the leak is fixed, the floors dried, the rugs cleaned. You return to your case, but something's changed. The museum decides to add a second object beside you. Not a sibling, not a spoon, a small textile, frayed, faded, and found in a well over 100 miles away. It's a scrap of linen with delicate embroidery, and in the thread, faded but clear, one word, mine. The museum places it carefully in the case with you. There's no placard update, just a small, handwritten note tucked between you. Two artifacts, two pronouns. Hers, mine. The distance between them, story. Visitors begin to leave their own words at the edge of the case. Scraps of paper, post-it notes, tiny folded poems. Some say ours, some say yours. Some say nothing at all, just quiet messages in invisible ink. The staff lets them stay, replaces them gently when they fade. No one litters, no one disrespects. You seem to invite reverence, not the stiff, awkward kind reserved for marble statues, but the simple human kind that says, I've lost things too. One night, a windstorm knocks out the power. The museum sits in darkness. The backup systems hum faintly, but the lights are out. The staff uses lanterns to check for leaks or broken windows. Your case is fine, but for a moment, you are unlit. No glow, no spotlight, just dark. And in that dark, something surprising happens. A night watchman stops by with his lantern, holds it low, casts its flickering circle around you, then places the lantern gently beside your case and sits. For nearly an hour, he doesn't check his watch. He doesn't speak, just sits with you, as if he knows. This is what you're for. To be still, to hold, to listen, not to save the world, just to remind it of its shape. When the lights return and the buzz of modernity creeps back in, you're still there, still gleaming, just slightly, still waiting, still hers. Now, centuries since your beginning, you sit as quietly as ever, but you are far from forgotten. You've become part of the museum's permanent identity, a symbol, they say, of the human ordinary made extraordinary by time. You're featured on postcards, lapel pins, even a children's book titled The Spoon Who Waited. They get your shape mostly right. Your color is a little too shiny, but the story, surprisingly close. In the book, you're voiced by a calm, wise narrator, A spoon who's seen empires rise, gods fall, and still insists the best thing ever held was lentils with garlic and a little honey. It's meant to be funny, but you know it's true. One morning, before opening, a new intern is assigned to polish your case. She's careful, gentle, but visibly skeptical. It's just a spoon, she mutters. Then she sees the inscription, hers, and she freezes. Not for long, just a breath, but enough for the idea to land. You're more than alloy and curve. You're what remains when all else falls away. A curator once called you a quiet survivor of loud centuries. You like that because history is loud, full of noise and smoke and crumbling marble. But you're soft, and soft things last longer than anyone expects. Your case now includes a tiny digital display. Visitors can scroll through all the places you've been: Egypt, Cyprus, Rome, a forgotten linen chest, a scholar's kitchen drawer, a modern classroom in Tokyo. A boy taps through the timeline, looks up at his mom and says, "She's like a time traveler," and maybe you are, not by choice, but by patience. You've traveled across time the way a river does, slowly, persistently, carrying little bits of people with you. Every meal, every touch, every moment of forgetfulness or care. Historians still debate your origin. Some believe you were forged for a princess. Others say you were crafted for common temple duties. One fringe theory argues you were part of a dining set given to a diplomatic visitor from a now lost kingdom whose only surviving evidence is your dented curve. They argue over your use, your inscription, your alloy. But you know better. You were never just used. You were chosen again and again, not by kings or scholars, but by hands, real hands, calloused, perfumed, trembling, young, old, each one placing you beside a bowl, lifting you to a mouth, rinsing you in warm water, laying you to rest, always with care, always with some kind of quiet affection. Even now, visitors lean close and whisper to you. You never answer, but maybe you don't have to. They walk away feeling heard, and that, really, is what sleep is too. A kind of listening, a stillness that gathers stories in its bowl, and you've become part of that. So now, as the lights dim once more in the gallery, and the final footfalls fade down the marble steps, you wait, not to be found, not to be lifted, just to hold space, for wonder, for memory, for the quiet. Word count, 1 to 93, wind down, final 300 words. So now, as your breath slows and the air settles around you, picture that little bronze spoon once more, nestled in the stillness of a moonlit museum. No voices, no motion, just a gentle hush that stretches through centuries. You picture its small bowl, curved like the palm of a resting hand, the surface worn smooth by time, touched by so many lives, now long faded into the hush of history. That quiet object, forgotten and remembered again, sits patiently, like you in bed, breathing softly, gently held by time. You think about how even the smallest things can carry vast stories, not because they were powerful or grand, but because they lasted, because someone loved them enough to keep them, because they were ordinary and therefore precious. Your room fades into shadow. Your limbs grow heavy, and like that spoon resting in its glass case, you let go of the day. You settle deeper into your own stillness, held by memory, warmed by stories, untouched by the noise of the world. The museum closes, the lights fade, and you drift, peaceful, silent, still whole.